Good evening. Since 6 o'clock p.m., the board has been in closed session to consider the following: the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the district or legal counsel for the district, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, and the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired. I will entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
A motion is, oops, go ahead.
Second.
Sorry. A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Casey.
Aye.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Wanke.
Aye.
Kosminski.
Aye.
McMillan.
Aye.
Gerke.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. Good evening and welcome to our April 3rd board meeting. Our mission is to educate students to be self-directed learners, collaborative workers, complex thinkers, quality producers, and community contributors. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Board members present this evening: Kristen Fitzgerald, Christine Gerke, Tony Casey, Amanda McMillan, Joe Kosminski, and Donna Wanke.
Okay, please join the Board of Education in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we've reached the point in our agenda for good news.
Okay. The symphonic orchestras of Naperville Central and Naperville North teamed up over spring break and went to Walt Disney World to participate in a national high school music festival called Festival Disney. Our Naperville 203 Orchestra won Best in Class and the coveted Golden Mickey Award. Congratulations to our students and staff members from both high schools. Great job.
All right, that's great news. All right, we have reached the point in our agenda for public comment. The Board of Education welcomes comments from the public at its meetings. Citizens who wish to address the Board of Education should identify themselves by name. Comments by individuals shall be limited to 3 minutes. If the individual is representing multiple individuals or a group, they shall be allowed to speak for 5 minutes. At the conclusion of the time, Mrs. Patton will designate by saying, "Time." As I call an individual for public comment, I will also designate the next speaker so that they have appropriate time to prepare. In accordance with board policy, issues raised in public comment will be taken under advisement by the Board of Education, but will not be discussed this evening. Issues raised during public participation may be added to future agendas or addressed by administrative staff. Because the questions raised in public comment address district operational matters, the superintendent, as the spokesperson for the district, is the board's designee to coordinate response to public comment and will apprise the board accordingly. As outlined in Board of Education Policy 2.230, individuals addressing the board should conduct themselves with respect and civility towards others. Individuals are free to express their criticism regarding decisions or policies, but the Board of Education expects that they refrain from personal attacks on our superintendent, Board of Education members, and administrative staff. At this point, I would like to welcome Jalen Jam. Our next speaker will be Natalie Richards.
And I'm not sure which student provided the one-pager, but the board each has one, so.
Good evening and welcome.
Hi, my name is Jalen Eisman, and I'm currently a student at Naperville Central. A small team of my fellow students and I have been working on a project focused on improving the quality and variety of food offered in our school's cafeteria. This project began in...
I'm going to pause you for just a second. Can you move the microphone so that's, make sure. That's better, yeah. If you can speak into it because it helps with the YouTube broadcast of it, so those watching at home. Thank you.
All right.
Sorry. We paused your time, so you're good. Pick up where you were.
This project began in 21-22 school year when a previous team spent almost 2 months researching the local, state, and national policies that has resulted in the food students are offered in our districts. These students taught us about the National School Lunch Program, the process by which districts like ours negotiate and choose food service contracts, and that is not only possible but reasonable to seek improvements in the qualities and variety of food served to thousands of students in our district each day. These students even visited Stevenson High School and learned about how thoughtful planning, and the marketing resulting in a food service contract that results in better food for students, equivalent profit for the service providers, and no change to the district budget. Though we are still working on this project, tonight we are going to present some of the student data and discuss possible goals and ask for your support in helping us get better, more nutritious options on our menu. Thank you in advance for listening and for your consideration. So far, me and my group have had a conversation with Melanie Brown, and she has made it clear with us that vendors can change, but our food will be similar. We understand that it would be very difficult to change food, and that's why we would like to work with you to bring better options to Naperville Central and to bring our students together to satisfy their needs. Currently, our district is in the process of awarding a new service contract, and after speaking with Melanie Brown, we have become aware that the district is awarding the contract solely based on the lowest bid. We understand that we are part of the National School Lunch Program and that it is not a requirement to be a part of. And there are other schools that are not a part of it and are doing perfectly fine. We think it would be beneficial to students and staff in our school if we weren't a part of this program. Thank you.
On behalf of the whole board, thank you for your comments. Okay, we always love to hear from students, and we have another student. Our next speaker will be Natalie Richards, followed by Hessa Shamad. Good evening and welcome.
Hi, my name is Natalie Richards, and I am a current junior at Naperville Central. A small team of my fellow students and I have been working on a project focused on improving the quality and variety of food offered in our school's cafeteria. As Jalen mentioned, this project began last school year, and the research that was done by previous groups taught my team about the National School Lunch Program, the process by which districts like ours negotiate and choose food service contracts, and that it is very attainable to improve our lunch program. My fellow students and I believe it is now time for district leaders to reconsider its current provider and perhaps even the assumptions that go into choosing a provider. Because student voice does not currently factor into district decision-making in this area, our team decided to conduct an initial survey at our school. In less than 1 week, over 300 students completed this survey. 71% said that they rarely leave campus during lunch. 201 students said they do not eat food from the cafeteria due to its taste, and 212 students said they eat food the cafeteria doesn't offer. Currently, 87.5% of NCH students who took part in our survey rate our cafeteria offerings lower than a 3 out of 5. For the amount of resources and students willing to work with district officials, this statistic is less than satisfactory. When asked what they look for in cafeteria food, 288 look for taste and 172 look for nutritional value. We believe that with so many students staying at school for lunch, the possibility for a nutritious and tasty lunch with the existing budget is very possible. We also believe that a highly ranked district like ours has an obligation to have a highly rated cafeteria with nutritious, healthy, and high-quality offerings. Our district should aim to make food and our options more appealing to students that will taste good and provide the nutritional boost students need to learn to their fullest potential. We are aware that District 203 is currently in the process of awarding a new food service contract and that they intend, for now, to award the contract to the food service provider based solely on the lowest bid. We also know that our district is not obligated to negotiate a contract exceeding a single year. Though it may be too late to reconsider the bidding process this year, we urge you in future years to look at more than just the price and to consider how the needs of all parties, including the needs of students, can be better met. We know there are creative models out there and are happy to share what we have learned about these schools with District 203 staff. We also know that you all have needs and interests and will do our best to make sure these needs and interests are met. We also hope you will consider working with the students in our district to figure out what we want, because in the end, these decisions affect us, yet we currently have no input. As self-directed learners, we are initiating this achievable goal by working collaboratively with both students and district officials to make our school community a better place, encompassing the values of our district's mission statement. I'll leave you with this. 2 weeks ago, I was at a lunch with several teachers visiting our school from out of state. As a part of this showcase, we were served a delicious lunch that included numerous options, including different meals, vegetables, rice, and beans. This lunch was provided by Airmark, the same provider that makes our school lunch every day. If we are a school that prides itself on equity, wouldn't it make sense to offer all students the opportunity to eat meals that are comparable?
On behalf of the whole board, thank you for your comments. Our next speaker will be Hessa Shamad. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. I'm Hessa Shamnad, and my daughter, she goes to Steeple Run. As a parent, I stand before you today with a heavy heart and a strong conviction. Every day, I send my baby girl to school, hoping and praying that she will. I apologize. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I know I only have three minutes. I'll do my best to speak up fast. Every day, I send my baby girl to school, hoping and praying that they will return home safely. But recent events have shattered that peace of mind, and it's time that we take action to ensure our school and commitment are safe from the scourge of gun violence. As a parent, I know you all are working very hard to keep our school and our children safe. But we cannot live in a society where mass shooting have become a commonplace. And our school children are enforced to endure lockdown drills and other measures designed to keep them safe. Even though Illinois has stronger gun laws, unfortunately, our neighboring states have loose gun laws which make it easier for guns to cross the border and get in the wrong hands. Therefore, we must take actions to prevent these tragedies from happening in the first place. And one critical step is to advocate for stricter gun laws and a ban on assault weapon. I beg the school board to work with other district boards to advocate for stricter gun laws and a ban on assault weapon, not just for our state, but for the country as a whole. We cannot ignore the fact that the issue of gun violence is not limited to our states. It affects our neighboring state, our country as well. It is time that we stand and demand our elected officials enact common sense gun laws to protect our children and community. We need to ensure that our children can go to school without the fear of gun violence. It is our responsibility as a parent and educator to create a safe environment for our children to learn and grow, but we cannot do this alone. We need to work together with other school districts to ensure our voices are heard loud and clear. The impact of gun violence is devastating, not just for the individuals involved, but for the entire community. Like I said, every day I send my baby girl to school, I cannot breathe. Every time I get a message or a phone call, my heart just drops. And I can only breathe the second she just comes out of the school. Imagine I have to go through this every day. Every parent in this country have to go through this every day. All this because of the gun laws we have for this country. This is unacceptable, and we cannot continue to allow this.
Time.
On behalf of the whole board, thank you for your comments. I do not have any additional slips of paper for anyone wishing to address the Board of Education. Does anyone else in the audience wish to address the board? Okay. As we finish our public comment period, I want to thank each of our participants on behalf of our whole Board of Education. We appreciate your advocacy. I want to assure each public commenter that your concerns have been heard by the Board of Education. We thank you for taking the time to keep us informed, and we consider you to be a vital part of the process of reflecting the views of our community. As a reminder, because the questions raised in public comment address district operational matters, the board has designated our superintendent as the spokesperson for the district as our designee to respond to public comment, and he will apprise the board accordingly. This will conclude our public comment period. Okay, so we will move on now to the consent agenda, the action by consent. I will entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Kuzminski.
Aye.
Gerke.
Aye.
Casey.
Aye.
McMillan.
Aye.
Wanke.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. So we'll go on in our agenda to item 7, communications, and we'll begin with item 7.01, superintendent staff school report.
Yes, just very briefly, welcome back to our students and our staff from spring vacation. Hope you had an opportunity to relax and enjoy some time. A couple of reminders. We come out of spring break and we kind of have a little bit of an unusual week this week. With tomorrow, a reminder that it's an e-learning day for all students. It's an election day in our community, and many of our sites are across the district are used as polling places. Families should have received communication from the district on March 22nd, and then a repeat communication from our buildings on March 23rd, and then hopefully received one today from that as a reminder for that. And then also a reminder that it's a non-attendance day on Friday, so a little bit of a unusual week, but we're happy to be back in the final stretch here before the end of the year. That's it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And we're looking forward to hearing all about that first e-learning day. All right, so we'll be going on to item 7.02, President's Report. I do not have a President's Report this evening, so we'll move to item 7.03, Board of Education Reports. Are there any Board of Education reports this evening? Okay, so we'll move on then to discussion without action. We'll begin with item 8.01, new course proposals.
Okay, annually, the district administration works in collaboration with other district leaders and staff to identify new high school courses aligned to our college career readiness and post-secondary pathways. So tonight we have a couple recommendations for you. I'll turn it over to Assistant Superintendent for Learning Services, Jane Willard. She is supported tonight by our two assistant principals for curriculum instruction at both high schools, Carrie Ray and Steve Giratina. So, Jane.
And thank you for being here because both of them are very much a part of this process as well. So tonight, administration is recommending that the board approve two new courses, one being Advanced Placement Pre-Calculus AB and Advanced Placement Pre-Calculus BC. Curriculum for both the AP Pre-Calculus courses is determined by the College Board and will be developed over the course of the 23-24 school year for the implementation for 24-25. As a result of these two course recommendations, administration is recommending the Board of Ed removal of pre-calculus and honors pre-calculus due to the significant overlap that these courses have with the new AP courses, AB and BC. Also because having the AP now provides our students with college credit for essentially the same courses that we have in place tonight. You will find the course overviews and details in board docs, and I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. Questions from the Board of Education regarding the new course proposals? I have a quick one.
Sure.
So just talking a little bit about the two courses that you'll remove and the one that will replace it. So you're removing both the honors and the non-honors pre-calc. And how does the level compare for the calculus, well, I guess for either of them, as to both the honors and the non-honors course?
So you're asking how the AP courses now align. Well, that's why we're actually bringing them when they did the crosswalk. So they crosswalked both of their current curriculum and the new AP courses, and they really found that it's essentially the same. And so that's where we don't feel there's going to, the student profile should not change for both of those courses. And the bonus would be that we get the AP credit, and then the next step should be a very streamlined alignment for calculus.
Whether you're taking the A, B, or the BC.
Right, doesn't matter. And they would, and quite frankly, because Donna knows all of these things, the AB, I gotta get all my ABs and my BCs correct. The AB will then move to AB calculus.
Right.
And then, or stats, and then the BC will move to the BC calculus. So it's normally what they do now, because honors goes to BC already. So it's the similar trajectory that they would go through.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, Donna.
I just want to say thank you for adding, I know this is a new addition to the College Board, and the fact that we've turned that around so quickly is amazing, and so thank you for that.
We're excited about it, thanks.
Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll have action on the new course proposals at our next board meeting. So we'll move on then to item 8.02, instructional resources.
Okay, also from Learning Services tonight are recommendations for new instructional resources that have been selected for the district for use in the coming school year. We'll be asking for approval at the next meeting. I'll turn it over to Jane again for some comments.
Sure. Resource identification is a very important component of our curriculum and development process. We regularly review resources for three main reasons. One is to replace outdated curricular materials. One is to look at new digital. Sometimes we just have new digital that we want to look at. And then we also look at the needs to ensure that we meet the diversity of our school, of our students in multiple perspectives. Teachers review these resources to determine the best alignment to our district curriculum and the Illinois Learning Standards. And we also have criteria for evaluation that's established by district leadership and curriculum teams. And as a matter of fact, our new evaluation tools we just created in partnership with Great Lakes Equity Group, and which was one of the reasons that we received the Innovator Equity Award, because of how we carefully evaluate and ensure representation and access through our resources for all. Based on the data that we get and the feedback collected, resources have been selected that we're bringing to you tonight for Board of Ed approval. You'll find that comprehensive list in board docs. This year there are minimal. You're probably used to seeing many more resources than this evening, but the majority of our resource budget will be used to renew our existing resources that we bring to you every September to update you and the community of what we have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that review of that process. Questions from the Board of Education? I see Donna.
So I think you just answered my question in your commentary, but as I was looking at the process for selection, so we already are incorporating our comprehensive equity program or plan in evaluating these.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That is part of our Pillar 3 when we look at, it's actually one of our action steps in our best practices for diversity and inclusion.
Okay, I appreciate that. I just, maybe in the future, we can update this process statement to reflect that, because I think, I see that it could be interpreted in there, but I would like us to have it more explicit, so thank you.
Any other questions from the Board of Education? Okay, thank you, and we'll have action on that at our next board meeting. All right, so we'll go on to item 8.03, establish hourly rates of pay.
Okay, annually, the administration reviews rates of pay for a number of positions in our district. So tonight we have our recommendations for changes to be effective for the 23-24 school year. There's a bit of review beginning back in 2019. I think we began a plan to prepare for meeting the minimum wage requirements and changes as well. So that's incorporated within that. Chief Human Resources Officer Bob Ross may have some additional comments here. Sure, Bob.
That's right, Mr. Bridges. Thank you. The bulk of the recommendations, and you'll see, let me call the board's attention to two documents in board docs. One's a memo and one's a chart. The chart, any rate that is highlighted in yellow is proposed for change. The bulk of the recommended changes are as a result of our plan to move things forward to keep in line with the Illinois March with the minimum wage. And as you may recall, the minimum wage has been going up to the point where on January 1, 2023, it became $13 an hour. On January 1, 24, it'll be $14. January 1, 25, it'll be $15 an hour. Mr. Bridges is correct. We've been marching toward increasing our rates in order to stay just ahead of those minimum wage changes. So most of the recommendations tonight are based on that. One that is not has to do with substitute teachers. And the current rate is $110. And what we're recommending is that for next school year, the rate would go up to $125. And that is another recommendation of several that we've made that the board has been nice enough to act upon to attempt to improve our substitute fill rate. We think this is a good step to take at this time to take effect for next school year. Be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you for that review of the history with our increasing rates. Questions from the Board of Education with regard to the increased rate of pay or the substitute proposal? I do have a quick question about the substitute. I know you have been working very hard to try to increase our filling of our substitute positions. Would you expect that in addition to this, we would continue with the other things that we're doing to try to address that?
Some yes, some maybe not. The surge pay that the board saw fit to institute in, I think, late January, we'd like to come back to you with a report on that. To date, we've only run surge pay 4 times. It's difficult to prove that it's helping. We do see improvement on days when we call surge, but it's hard to necessarily attribute it to the surge. So we think we need some more data before we can make a recommendation. So we'd like to take a look at that. The other recommendations we've made and the board has instituted, kind of a pat on the back for those subs who work 10 days getting a $100 payment. We expect that to continue. We hope that it will. We've adjusted the rate for retired teachers. We think that's a good idea to continue. We'd like to come back to you on the surge.
Okay. Thank you. Amanda.
I just wanted a little bit of clarity. If there's people that have been in these positions for multiple years, is this the rate that they'll be receiving, or is it adjusted like at all for the number of years that they've been here? Say if they've been here for 10 years or so.
Yes, it depends on the position. So in some cases, it doesn't adjust. Lunch supervisor is a good example. In other ones, where you see seasonal custodians, it does. It's based on number of years. So I would say it just depends on the title, and I'd refer you to the chart.
I don't see any other questions, but if anyone has any additional questions, we can send them ahead. This action on this will not be until next board meeting. Okay, so we'll move on then to item 8.04, policy review, first reading policy 7.180, preventing bullying, intimidation, and harassment.
I'm going to make some introductory comments regarding agenda items 8.04, 8.05, and 8.06 first, in that annually the district, in collaboration with board representatives, board liaisons, administration, building administration, staff, as well as other stakeholder input from students and parents, review board policy 7180, 7190, and 7240. And for 7190 and 180, it's in accordance with Illinois School Code requirement that be done. We have had a history of doing that even prior to that being a requirement. But we do all of these every year to get additional input for any recommendations for changes. This evening, Allison Bouter, Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services overseeing the junior high, is going to make some additional comments regarding this. I know we had 2 board members, Kristen Fitzgerald and Charles Cush, who I believe participated in these as the board liaisons, and may have additional comments. But provided in board docs for each of these are any proposed changes. I think we have proposed changes in 7180 and 7240, no proposed changes in 7190. And I don't know how much of the thunder I've stolen from Allison, but I'll let her go ahead and make some opening comments on behalf of Dr. Holland. We'll be asking for board action at our next meeting on April 17th. Allison.
On March 8th, the Student Behavior Advisory Committee did meet. It was a great turnout. There were 26 participants, either in person or via Zoom, for this committee. It was the largest number of participants that was noted, at least historically, in quite some time. The meeting was held during the school day. That was done on purpose to try to amplify the student voice and participation. Mr. Mike Stock, the dean at Naperville Central High School, and Mr. Jim Conrad, the dean at Naperville North High School, co-chaired the committee and led the conversations. The conversations between stakeholders were very authentic and insightful. A few topics that were discussed in detail, just to give you some highlights. We talked about the total number of reported incidents of behavior, bullying and harassment from 20 to 21 and 21-22 school years. We reviewed that we are required to investigate all claims of bullying and harassment that occurs at all levels. We looked at those numbers and talked about some of the different identification and incident information that we do review as an administrative team on a regular basis. That information helps us look proactively at supports for students and additional staffing, supervision that may be needed. In addition, we are able to identify professional learning for staff, lagging skills for students, and plan for additional social emotional learning opportunities that may be needed to address some of these incidents. Also, students overwhelmingly shared how supported they feel at the high school level by their deans as well as the campus supervisors. They identified that positive relationships and impactful conversations were really helpful in the situations and things that they were facing. They also talked about just the need to understand the amount of resources that are available to them to either report or receive, and how as they have become older, they feel more comfortable navigating that, and talked about different ways that we can look at maybe the junior high level of really overviewing and reiterating the supports that we do have in place and ways that students can report. Overall, there were positive feelings about restorative conversations and humanizing language within our current practices related to student behavior and discipline shifts. Since the meeting, we have already started to have conversations with different groups of administrators and stakeholders. A couple of things that we are looking at is increasing our communication to students and families on how to report bullying and harassment, as well as continuing to look at unstructured areas where bullying and or harassment or misbehavior are more likely to occur based on the data that we have. So in the current version of policy 7180, which was attached to the memo, there are some changes. In the red font, we are removing staff member. The reason why that's being removed is because other policies refer to staff, and the content new to the policy is identified in blue, and then the content that is in green is not being removed, but we've moved it to a different part of the policy where we felt the language is more fitting. So this policy is up for review and discussion. Is there any clarification that you would like?
Well, I think I'm the only board member that is present, who was present at the meeting, and I do also just want to agree that it was a really wonderful, robust discussion from our students. I think that doing it during the day was fantastic. It definitely allowed for more participation, but I thought one of the other things that I think really helped to guide the discussion was the presentation of the bullying numbers. So that's something I think that the board would benefit from having, that summary of the bullying instances. In particular, I thought it was helpful to see where bullying occurred by level and by location. And so that was something I thought the students really responded to a lot. I think you really accurately reflected their thoughts in terms of how strongly they felt supported at the high school level, and some areas where there could maybe be for growth based on how many bullying incidents were at the junior high level. I thought that was definitely great that you picked that up in the discussion, and also that you're looking at the follow through, because definitely that this was the first step, hearing all their feedback, but it's exciting to hear that you're already going through the process of determining how we can make adjustments to look at those locations where the bullying is more frequent, whether that's by level or location. So, questions or comments from the Board of Education with regard to Joe?
Thank you for kind of trying something a little bit different with this, and it sounds like it was a great discussion. I was on this a couple years ago, and it was a good discussion, but a very small group turned out on that evening Zoom. So it's great to hear that more students participated, and Kristen kind of alluded to my question, but I was wondering, since this did work out well with the high school level, are there thoughts of, talking to the junior high or, even some of the elementary students?
No, we can take that back under consideration. We've typically done it, I think, probably mostly because the co-curricular code of participation mostly applies to our high school interscholastic, but I think that's something that we as an administration could talk about, what that might look like.
So does it not apply to junior high athletics and activities as well in some way?
So let me look really quick. The
Code of conduct is only for the high school.
That's the high school. Yep.
But the bullying and harassment
Correct.
and misbehavior data that we overviewed there were 2 meetings that took place on the same day. In that first meeting, it definitely, we were talking about there were administrators from the junior high and elementary school level, but how we could maybe amplify the voices of the junior high or take some of these conversations back and have some focus groups to really get to the root of some of the issues there.
Definitely, it seems appropriate given that the bullying incidences were so much more heavily represented in the junior high level than the high school and elementary. Other questions from the Board of Education with regard to the bullying policy? Okay, so then we'll go on in our agenda to item 8.05, first reading policy 7.190, student discipline.
I'll give it back to Allison here in just a second because there are changes on this one. So if you want to highlight any specific things regarding policy 7190.
Yes, so the meeting that took place basically highlighted the recommendations. We look at data on misbehavior on a monthly basis across both levels, but at this meeting, we did review both policies and take into the guidance. Basically, we need to have follow-up conversations with the different age groups and look at the recommendations and continue to work on the restorative practices that really have been a shift over the last couple of years. So for 7180, there is some overlap with 7190. There are no proposed changes, though recommended by press, our legal counsel, or administration to 7190.
Thank you. Questions from the Board of Education with regard to 7.190, the student behavior component of this set of policies? Okay. All right. So if there are no questions, we'll go on to the next. But if anyone has any questions in the interim time period, we don't have action until the next board meeting. So you can feel free to submit any other questions that would come to your mind. So we'll go on then to item 8.06, policy review, first reading policy 7.240, co-curricular code of participation.
So on March 8th, we also had a meeting. At this meeting, there were over 40 stakeholders. It was very well attended. People could attend via Zoom or in person. A special thank you to Ms. Jen Baumgartner, the Dean of Student Activities at Naperville North High School, and Mr. Bob Quinn, the Athletic Director at Naperville North High School, for co-chairing the meeting and facilitating these conversations. The discussion was super insightful. The students were very honest with us on where they stood with the code and some practices and recommendations they had. We all kind of agreed that the meeting was probably too short and it could have continued for quite a lot. Since the advisory committee meeting, we've already had follow-up meetings with the Dean of Students of Activities and the athletic directors from both high schools. These will continue to take place. The follow-up conversations around the feedback are really around how the code, including the fine print, is communicated to all students and their families within each extracurricular activity. How we are proactively communicating social emotional resources to our student participants so that if they are struggling or a teammate is struggling, students are aware of how to get support without adversely affecting their participation. We are looking at the language and practices utilized within the code to ensure that it is humanizing and restorative. Part of our future work is to think about what's been broken in different situations and how do we restore everyone's dignity. How are we supporting students with their struggles as well as rallying around them when they do get to return? There was also discussion on if a restorative learning piece or opportunities could be considered to alleviate some of the consequences from offenses. And so that is a big conversation where we're looking at other school districts in the area too on what they're doing, as well as just kind of continuing to get the student input into that part. So the current version of this policy is attached to the memo. There are no proposed changes recommended by press, our legal counsel, or administration. Basically, we're using the guidance on how the code is lived, and that's in the protocols and procedures, not in the actual policy.
Amanda.
I really love the process that you all go through with getting student voice. One of the things that I'm hearing, and I just want to get a little bit more clarity, is that you're having really great, robust conversations with youth. They're giving suggestions and, perspectives of their experience with it and ideas. But it's not changing the specific policy per se. What is being done with those recommendations then?
Yes, so there have been some follow-up meetings with the athletic directors and the Dean of Student Activities. In addition to, we're talking about maybe we need to pull different groups of students and really have deeper conversations about some of the ideas that were shared on what we can do to still be in compliance with the policy and the IHSA, but also really looking at how the district is valuing restorative practices and just trying to be supportive of students that mistakes do happen, and how do we really help and wrap our students around during those times.
So it's kind of influencing the procedure.
It's influencing the procedure and like how we live the policy, but not the policy language itself.
71890, 7190, and 7240 are three policies that the board has elected to be what we would call custom policies, as opposed to when we look at the next agenda item under the press updates. So they're essentially based off of press and the press recommendations. But over time, they all have evolved and changed a little bit based on feedback and input from this committee. But it's kind of one of those things where we also have to ensure that we are meeting school code responsibilities, staying current with legal precedent, anything that, any other sort of other rules and laws that would govern that. So sometimes there may be recommendations of change. It really can't change the policy, but can be addressed through the procedure.
Just to comment a little bit about the discussion. First of all, I think that the 40 participants was amazing. And I thought that the use of technology to allow, there was a couple of different parents that had to work and that they were able to Zoom in, even though the students were there in person. And so that kept the parent participation high, even though it was during the day. So I thought both of those things were really welcome. And I thought they really worked in terms of helping us to get a group together that was able to talk at the right time. Definitely your comments about the discussion are on target in terms of, I think that the group really pondered the spirit of the current policy in light of, the spirit of the policy, even of our discipline code, and some of the reforms that have been put in with SB 100, where it is something where we look at each individual student in each individual case, and we're required to do that, contrasted by the co-curricular code, where it is much more strict, that this is what happens every time that you have this particular situation. So that was what a lot of the discussion was about in terms of how that feels and what the spirit of that is in terms of whether or not it is restorative, whether or not it is looking at all the situations in the way that we look at student discipline. I think that I'm excited to hear the follow-up conversations that are already beginning. It does sound as if there's conversations that has to happen with IHSA, as well as with our own staff and our own other districts around us. But I think that that's the right questions to be asking in terms of the hope that we have for our students that in their co-curricular activities, whether they be athletics or activities, that they feel that sense of support, and that when they do have situations that we are able to look at them all individually and be sure that we are, as you said, rallying around them when they have concerns. So definitely a great conversation about that, and one that I've heard feedback from some of even the participants following that about what a great discussion it was and how it caused additional discussions in their own homes. So thank you for helping to facilitate that conversation, and thank you to Dr. Holland, who I know is not here, but I know worked very hard on that as well, and our other staff that were part of it, the activities directors as well. Any other comments or thoughts on this policy? So we'll look forward to hearing additional things about how it's going next time we have the policy. All right. If anyone has any additional questions, they can send those, and we won't have action until our next board meeting. Okay, so item 8.07, Press Policy Update 110 is our next agenda item.
Okay, so these policies were brought to you as a part of the Policy Update 110 released by IASB's Press Services at the last meeting, requesting action at our next meeting on April 17th. We did, it was caught that there was a suggestion made that the board agreed to regarding policy 7310, regarding the title of it, because the title in the press draft uses IASB language, which essentially designates K-8 as elementary schools. We're going to change that title to be more in line with ours. Other than that, be happy to answer any additional questions, be looking for action at the next meeting.
Questions from the board, and I see Donna's hand.
So I had questions on two policies, but I can ask one and then we can move on to the other. So policy 5250 is that there's a lot of change in that, and I'm not entirely understanding where the things that are being eliminated are covered then. So if you could, like particularly, I have a lot of questions on this one. So the sick and the bereavement leave is all being taken out. So, and then the family bereavement leave is taken out. So can we start with those? I just don't understand where that's addressed then.
Yeah, I ask Bob to chime in here on some of it if need be. The introductory language in that policy addresses collective bargaining language. And essentially, it defers to collective bargaining language as opposed to getting in specifically. There are some things that are listed in the press recommendation that are not consistent with what we have in our collective bargaining agreements with some of our employee groups. So we felt that some of that was going to be kind of confusing or misleading if it was addressed in this language using their language. Bob, have I essentially captured our recommendation on that?
Yes, that's correct.
So it's all within the contract, is what
Yeah,
we're saying?
correct.
Okay. Okay, well then, my next question on this policy is at the end of it, there is language being removed on the COVID-19 paid administrative leave. And I understand that, that language starts with, during any time when the governor has declared a disaster due to public health emergency under, and then it has the Illinois state code, or the Illinois state law. So I understand that we're going to be this is going to be, theoretically done come May, at the end of the school year. But I guess I'm confused as to why we're taking this out, because it's already prefaced with if it's declared a disaster, and if it does come back, the language would come back, correct? Like if there's another disaster due to public health emergency declared, then this language would be effective again, I think. So
I'll have to check on that. I think that was part of our concern about keeping it in there. We'll follow up with that for the next time.
Okay.
Was it the press recommendation to take it out?
No, we took it out.
All right. Do you want me to go on to my next one, or should I?
Go ahead with your question.
Okay, this is my last one then. So when I was reviewing policy, and this is more of a new business, but I just want to make the reference to where it's coming from. So when I was reviewing policy 7285, it referred to policy 7270. So that one's not on our list. So if we can add at an upcoming meeting to the agenda, I'd like to have a discussion on policy 7270. And the reason for that is it talks about, in this policy that we were looking at, it talked about undesignated epinephrine injectors, and there are other undesignated medications, including an opioid antagonists. And just on March 29th, I think those were approved for over-the-counter use. So, as a FDA approved them for over-the-counter sale. So I guess I'd like us to review our 7270 in light of that new development, and with the hope that we can add that to our list of undesignated medications.
Okay, we'll take a look at it. Under, as it had been previously classified, we've had a hard time getting any sort of approval to use it or a prescription written. That being said, Press 111 already actually is out, and I'll be curious to see if this one's one of the policies addressed in that. So, but we can definitely add it to a future agenda item.
Well, I don't think the law has changed at all. I think the law says we may have it as a school district, and I think I tried to look at some other districts, and I think others have it. So, but the law is in the process of going through legislation now, and it's shifting from may to shall. So I was just hoping to get ahead of it.
Yep.
Yep, and we've got item 7.270 marked for a future. All right. Any other questions regarding any of the policies in Press 110 update? And as our superintendent has mentioned, we also have Press 111 update coming soon. So. Is that like in the next meeting? No.
We'll have to look. We may do is bring to you, even for action, any of the 111 recommendations from press that are simply citation or legal reference updates. No change to language or anything like that.
And again, as we've said quite often, this is cumbersome to be looking at all these policies, but it's keeping us up to date with current law. So
I'm thrilled that we're doing it. So thank you.
So, all right. So if there's no additional questions on press policy update 110, any of these policies, then we will have action at our following meeting. But if anyone has any follow-up questions, please feel free to send them, and then we'll have action at our next meeting. All right, so that is all of our discussion without action. So we'll go on to discussion with action. We have no discussion with action this evening, so we'll go to item 10, old business. We have no old business this evening. So we'll go to item 11, new business. We have no new business this evening. So we'll go to item 12, upcoming events. And we'll begin with item 12.01, schedule of events.
I'll just reiterate a couple points that I made in my earlier report. Tomorrow is an e-learning day for all students. Families should have received communication March 22, 23, and today is a reminder for procedures on how to log on for that. Friday is a non-attendance day. Our next Board of Education meeting is April 17th.
Okay, thank you for that review. So we'll go on then to item 13, adjournment, and we'll have item 13.01, motion to adjourn. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
A motion and a second are heard. Please call the roll, Mrs. Patton.
Wanke,
Aye.
McMillan,
Aye.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Kosminski,
Aye.
Gerke,
Aye.
Casey.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. We are adjourned. Good night, everyone.